Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Wednesday. We nearly over the hump. Yeah, every day is sort of at the top these days. This is Gianna London, founder of the Natural Women's Council, and we're going to have a chat today with two lovely active ladies who are in the Natural Women's Council as well. I'll introduce myself for those who don't know me. I founded the Natural Women's Council nearly a year ago. There was just about 3 or 4 of us, and now we have about 25 on the ground doing a lot of work and also behind the scenes. I'm a mama of 2 small kids. I plan events, passion project events. So we have one coming up soon, thinklocal.ie. You can visit our site. And I'm also a personal and business life coach. It's my pleasure today to have Natalie on our discussion, who is a psychiatric nurse, and Natasha, who is a documentary producer, and they both do tremendous work in our Natural Women's Council. And we met years ago during the COVIDian era, so to say. We met through Jerry O'Neill's, it was called Mandate Free at the time, and we had one set up in different counties, and we were on the admin group for that, weren't we, ladies? And we did some late night Zoom calls and chats, and then we realized we only live 30 minutes away. We met in the parks, and now we do everything. Like last weekend, the mama sleepover, where we tried to do this that night, but the sound was bad, and we get together with our kids, and most importantly, we're all mummies of little ones. So Natalie has done fantastic work. We launched our library campaign in January because we were seeing really sexually explicit and indoctrinating books in the children's section of public libraries. And we launched a campaign whereby many of us across Ireland were going into libraries. I think we have hundreds of people who have done this, gone into the library, looked for these books, went to the librarian and served a public notice of liability letter if the book was not age appropriate. And we were dismissed by libraries, county council, children's ombudsman kicked it to curb. We went to the Garda Síochána. We have about 5 or 6 pulse numbers around the country because these books clearly violate the Children First Act. And we were also dismissed by the Garda. So we kept hitting brick wall after brick wall after brick wall. But the ladies in the Natural Women's Council, when we hit a brick wall, we say, how can we get through this brick wall? And Natalie today is going to talk about one of the books that she found in the library, and some brick walls she's been climbing through, and we're making some headway on that. So Natalie, talk to us about this book, and I'll share the cover while you're talking.
So this book, Trans Teen Survival Guide. So like, as John has said, I suppose, a multi-pronged approach, lots of closed doors, lots of brick walls. And then this book came up in our group chat, and the pages within the book contained a picture guideline on how to administer an intramuscular injection, right? Yeah, John is showing it there, shocking. So even that in itself shows incorrect technique. It doesn't give enough description on how to do it safely. Like, should a book even have this in it? It's just totally, like, so much can go wrong giving an IM injection.
What's an IM? For anyone on here who's not medical, what is an IM injection, and what could go wrong if you follow just a little DIY guide on how to do it?
Yeah, so IM means intramuscular. So there's a couple of sites it can be given, depending on the drug, depending on the volume of the drug, which doesn't go into any detail of that in the book. So many things that can go wrong is you can hit a sciatic nerve if you're giving it in the ventral gluteal site, which is the recommended site. Obviously, medical health professionals are aware of how to locate the site, how to give it safely, what to look for, adverse events, etc. So really having that in a book for 12 to 17-year-olds is just crazy. So then you go on into the chapters, chapter 8, where it focuses on hormones. So it basically discusses the use of testosterone, and advocates, these children to, locate the testosterone on the internet. So it actually, like, what it says is shocking. So the wording, I'll read out this part for you. So in many countries, access to hormones can be limited or even impossible, or it can sometimes take up to a few years to get hold of them. It's a well-known fact that you can get almost anything off the internet, and hormones are no different. So yeah.
Can we just even say for anyone watching, like what it's saying, it could even take up to a couple of years, because the process that's in place at the moment is that you would legally change your name, your identity, you would socially transition, you would see a doctor, a psychologist, or whatever means it is that would check the box to then enable you to be able to be prescribed these drugs. Is that more or less sort of the bullet points?
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a process in place, and it's in order to safeguard the person, in order to ensure informed consent is given, that they're aware, you know, nothing should be rushed, especially when it comes to, you know, using hormones or anything along those lines. It shouldn't be rushed. But then to kind of push it in a book, glamorize it in a book, make it sound like it's so easy, you know, if the medical professionals aren't going to agree with you, you can go do it yourself. So
Natalie,
basically then the
I can jump in. You said, I like what you said. If the medical professionals don't agree, maybe they haven't gone through the proper assessment, they don't agree. But if you think of age 12, so these books in a library for age 12, and if any of our listeners can kind of rewind in their mind and say, what was I like at age 12? Well, I can tell you when I was 12, something your parents tell you, you do the opposite. It's called rebellion. And that's part of the natural puberty progression, the natural teenager years. So if your doctor has,
and that's for a healthy adolescent.
It's healthy to be a rebellion. So this is particularly dangerous for age 12, because if their parents are telling them, you know, no, maybe you're not ready, let's talk through this, or the doctor, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to go to the library. I'm going to get this book and learn how to order them online. So your point's really important, because they're already going through that rebellious stage in their mind. And this is another way they can rebel and order these drugs. So that's great. Carry on. Sorry.
As I was saying, that's like your healthy adolescent. That's a normal phase, because you're grappling with being given more freedom versus still having to listen to, you know, mom and dad's rules and all that kind of stuff. So it's completely natural. And then you have also a huge portion of adolescents who have crippling low self-esteem, depression, all these different things that we can see there's data on, that we know the age groups that are affected by these kind of things, and that when they kind of enter into that age group, we see an incline naturally, decade on decade, of these things, because hormones and different things are jumping around in our bodies. You
and
know,
most kids have one of these, right? How many 12-year-olds have one of these? So all they have to do is, mommy and daddy are busy doing dinner or working from home or whatever they're doing, and the kid gets on their little smartphone or their iPad or their laptop or their tablet, and they can .com, get the hormones, boom, learn how to inject them. So Natalie, what did you, if you could talk us, you saw the book, what did you then do that we maybe hadn't thought of before?
So there's numerous, I suppose, subsections within the HPRA. So for those who don't know, the HPRA is the Health Products Regulatory Authority. So they regulate health products. So similar to, you know, if you're aware of the FDA, so kind of similar idea. So every single section I emailed, sorry, this is not in our remit. Sorry, this is not in our remit. So this, you know, a couple of weeks later, the HPRA, the section that deal with compliance in advertisement, like books, mainstream media, radio, television, advertisement, that section came back to me and told me that they'd opened up a case. So it was a huge, oh my God, somebody has heard us. Somebody also realizes how wrong this is, and we might get somewhere. So we'd set up a phone call, and I was sitting there all prepared, ready for a battle, because this is what we've been used to with everything, closed doors, brick walls, and battles. So I was really surprised when they opened up the phone conversation. So it was with the doctor and one of the scientific advisors. And their first words to me was, thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. This would not normally be within their remit, as in they would not normally scrutinize kind of books to this degree. They wouldn't have ever come across it had we had not, you know, contacted them. So they also said they were really concerned. The scientific advisor, basically they got access to the book themselves for the full content of the entirety of the book. So their main concern was chapter 8, which was the hormones. So she read out a couple of I suppose sentences, a couple of paragraphs that, you know, concerned them mostly, which is the same concerns we had, the same things what I just read to you about accessing hormones on the internet, and also sharing leftovers to other people. And then there's a section where people give their own personal accounts and personal stories. There was a person who had said their medical professional advised them to wait a number of years before prescribing cross-sex hormones. And they weren't happy with that, and they went off and got it themselves, and they're fantastic now. A lot of this, they also agreed with me, kind of coercive content in the wording, that, you know, you use the testosterone and it fixed my problem. But it only gives a little caption of that short interim period. It does not then go on to 5 years' time, 10 years' time. How does that person now feel? You know, it's a very, very, very coercive snapshot.
That shocked Natasha. She nearly fell over there.
Yes.
And it
wasn't me, it was the whole thing.
That happens to me regularly. The stuff shocks me so much, I nearly fall daily as well. So Natalie, in the books, from the books I've seen in the libraries, and also the school curriculum books and the school videos for teachers, the thing that they're missing, they're celebrating, and as you use the word, coercing these children, these innocent kids, and many of them are the most vulnerable kids. I think up to 90% of children in Ireland, or people in Ireland, men and women as well, seeking gender services, up to 90% were autistic. So if you think about, it's the most vulnerable children who are going to go down the path of ordering those hormones, injecting themselves, and doing this decision. But what's missing from anything I've seen is the word detransition, detransitioner, irreversible. And I had the pleasure of attending the GenSpect conference over 3 days down in County Kerry, and it was a fantastic experience. I left feeling very overwhelmed, emotional, and a bit deflated about, I suppose, the darkness and intensity of all of this. But we met about 6 young people, adolescents at this stage, who had gone through the full transition. They'd gone like puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and the full surgery, only to wake up and say, this actually did not make my problems go away. This exasperated my problems, and they're reversing back to their birth sex. But if you were to close your eyes and listen to any of these young ladies, probably in their early 20s, speak, their voice from all the testosterone has broken. It's now the voice of a male or man. And my understanding from that testosterone is, once it changes your voice and it changes all of your sex organs and everything, you can't go back. So, you know, these beautiful young women, born a woman, changed their voice, they grew the facial hair, they had the mastectomies, and they woke up a few years later and said, I was actually born in the right body and I want to go back, but I don't believe that the effects of these cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers are ever reversible. And I haven't seen that in any of these books to say that there's detransitioners and there's regrets and the concerns. It just packages it up.
You never hear anything about osteoporosis, any of these things, you know?
Packages it up like this will be the answer to all of your problems. You can become a new person, a new gender, and then it becomes a social contagion for vulnerable children, and they don't want even parents involved in it. So when you were speaking to these doctors, what's happening now? What's the next step in the process with HPRA?
So the next step is, they were unsure themselves as to who to specifically approach. They initially had said their goal will be to get the book removed. That's the outcome that they want. But what they have felt is the difficulty with them is the book itself doesn't name a specific drug. It states, you know, testosterone, but because a specific brand is not mentioned, they're in a gray area basically. But that's not to say they're still not going to steam forward with it. So they're going to do their best. I suppose so. The HSE, I mentioned, you know, CAMS, because again, this is
there. Did you see the sticker on the book?
Yeah.
Hi, HI, hi. It stands for Healthy Ireland. It's actually part
Healthy
of
Ireland.
And when Linda Kennedy, who's one of our Natural Women's Council members, who's a teacher, she wrote loads of letters to the libraries and Children's Books of Ireland, Fingal County Council, all she's done so much work. And there was one part of the HSE that denied being part of this. And they actually denied having any part of these books, but right on the books is a little HI sticker, and they're denying denying that they're part of these books.
Yeah, the doctor was so concerned at that. he could not understand how the Healthy Ireland stamp is on the front of that book, you know, considering the context and the content within the book. So they wanted to know who approved these books, like who gave the final stamp and seal of approval to say, yes, these are appropriate books to have on shelves, and that these are appropriate books for 12 to 17-year-olds. And, you know, like, as you said, between FOIA requests and contacting the Ombudsman, nobody can really give us a clear answer. So from what we could see in mainstream media, it seems to be, I suppose, driven by the NGOs and Roger O'Gorman. So that was another person I asked him to possibly approach, you know, to try and figure out who exactly is saying yes.
Someone needs to be held accountable. Like, and then Natasha, years ago, Natasha, I remember when we met and you were trying to, at that point, organize like we were talking about doing an FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request campaign. That was your great idea. And then when we formed the Natural Women's Council, we actually have a couple people in our Women's Council who are doing the FOIA campaign, and they've submitted letters under the Freedom of Information Act to find out who is signed off on these. Where are the names? Are there any minutes from the meetings that were discussing that these books were okay for age 12? Which brings me to a really interesting point, and I have to dig into this a bit more. When I was at the GenSpect conference in Kerry, it was just a few weeks after the big swords event at the library, where we were outside assembling regarding our consent for these books. And someone at the GenSpect conference came up to me and said, "You're doing great work with the libraries. I see all the videos and trying to get these books moved to the adult section." He said, "I'm a librarian." He said, "We have been asked in Ireland, that we've got the memo, not to minute any of the discussions on these books." So somebody has silenced all the libraries in Ireland to say, if anybody raises any concern with these sexually explicit, indoctrinating, or medically damaging books, Natalie, like the one that you're talking about, we're not allowed to add it to the minutes. They're being told, which is not legal. It's a public meeting, public libraries meeting, in their staff meetings. They're not allowed to write it down. It's as if it never happened. So that's really, really unethical that they're silencing them. Yeah. But I have libraries.
And Natalie, this book isn't even suitable. I mean, this isn't even one of the books that could be just moved to the adult section, because it's dangerous even for adults to put it on the black market and just inject it, you know?
No, but like, I mean, nobody can go, like, I mean, safely administer an IM injection on their own. Like, even I give them like 3, 4, 5 times a week. I give intramuscular injections. And I think if I was to try and do it to myself, there's just no way. Like, you just couldn't possibly safely give it to yourself. So, but never mind, like, I mean, medical professionals are trained to give them. You know, lay people should not be giving IM injections, because especially like what the HPRA had mentioned to me as well, when you're buying drugs online, hormones, there's no process to know that these are coming from a safe place, what they even contain, you know, like, is there dangerous products within the purchase that they've made, you know, as well as, like, I mean, I can't, the picture guide of giving an IM injection, like, I mean, I just.
And when we had our mama sleepover there last week, and all 3 of us, we were taught, when we tried round 1 of this before the sound was too poor, I was telling you the story of a friend of mine. Her sister ordered, after many years of IVF and running out of money or whatnot, had ordered fertility drugs online and injected herself, and she got very, very sick, nearly death sick. Turns out that the drugs that came in on the internet had little microscopic shrapnels of glass in them. So when she was injecting herself, she was injecting glass into the body. So, you know, there's a reason for things like, you know, we can all question the safety of the drugs, of course, but for whatever it's worth, there's a reason why there's HPRA and FDA to make sure that drugs are as safe as possible. And even some of the drugs that have come to the market, like, you know, the swine flu jab, that wasn't safe and was pulled. Even the COVID injection, if we look at the injuries and the fatalities from that injection, which was an experiment, and that was put through a process. This is a .com drug in a children's book in the library, which could have God knows what in it, but nobody is listening to us, as they're calling us far right thugs when we go to the library and say, this particular book is dangerous. You're far right. This is teaching children to
Yeah.
order things and inject themselves, for heaven's sakes.
But like, how would the child, like, how would the person even know how much to give themselves? And who is going to monitor their testosterone levels? So what are the effects of having too much testosterone? Like psychosis.
Yeah.
You
Is that
know?
what can happen? Psychosis if you get too much?
Yes, you can become psychotic. So, I mean, there's so many reasons why it has to be regulated, why it has to be prescribed, administered by a medical professional, and observed for negative effects, outcomes.
Can we just sidestep for a second as well? Like I mentioned briefly about the bullet points process that people have to go through in order to get this prescribed. I just want to say, and I think I can speak on behalf of you ladies as well, we're not advocating for any child to even go through the process and get this prescribed by a doctor. I don't agree with any child being prescribed any puberty blocker, any cross-sex hormone, any of this thing. No child should be prescribed this and have their natural course of development and growth into adulthood obstructed in such a heinous way, you know. So I just pop that in there and interject. That's one point. And the second point as well is just to make people aware of the language that's being used on this huge big bubble of a campaign. And one of them is that they have just decided, think tank somewhere, of a marketing team, a paid marketing team, be it in this government or abroad, because we hear the same language being used all over the place, categorizing age 12 to 17 as young adults. A young adult, you think, is a college student, a graduate. They're, you know, starting off in their young adult life, starting off in their first job or their training or whatever it is that they're doing. A 12-year-old is not a young adult. And I can say that legally speaking and morally speaking, you know. And they knew that they couldn't just change the law. They couldn't just change the acts and statutes and suddenly categorize, okay, well, now an adult is from age 12. They can now drive, they can now drink, they can now vote, they knew that they couldn't just do that because it had too many knock-on effects. So they did it. They used psychology, as they use every time, to turn the tide on things. And they've subtly recategorized, completely unofficially. This is just marketing terms. They're marketing a brand here. Children as being young adults. You go into the library, but it's not in the children's sections. And we've actually had that sentence said to us. It's not in the children's sections, in the young adult section.
Because by standards, you're not an adult till you're 18. So a young adult would be like 19 to 22 or something. I mean, that's a young adult, like a college student. And if I can just, it was a really good point, Natasha, because we don't believe in the Natural Women's Council or any groups we work with, Irish Education Alliance, Parents' Rights Alliance, Lawyers for Justice Ireland, Hold the Line. All the groups that our organization partner with, none of us believe that children should be taking irreversible puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, or having surgeries. And I have the GenSpect website here, and I was so impressed with their conference led by Stella O'Malley. It was really, really well done and so informative. But on their website, genspect.org, it says, what is GenSpect's position on medical transition in children and young people? And they state, we do not believe that children are equipped to make lifelong decisions about medical transition procedures. Adolescence and young adulthood is a key development stage during which identity is still evolving. We believe that young people should be encouraged to accept and to love their bodies. We do, however, support the rights of mature adults to make informed healthcare choices regarding their medical transition. So GenSpect is made up of a group of, you know, they have people in their organization. Their team includes people who are transgender, who are homosexual, who are therapists and such. And they do not believe in medically transitioning children. Children should not take puberty blockers. And just to remind everyone, for anyone who may want to see the book again, this is the book Natalie has been meeting with HPRA about, the Trans Teen Survival Guide with the HSE sticker, Healthy Ireland, by Owl and Fox Fisher. This book teaches age 12 to 17 in public libraries how to order hormones online and inject their bodies with the hormones they order on the internet, which is clearly very dangerous. And no child, even if they go to their doctor, should ever be given puberty blockers or hormones.
You should also say, guys, that this is on the recommended reading list for student teachers. So young people who are training to become primary school teachers, this is on the recommended reading list for them. This is on the recommended reading list for students, for junior cycle. This is on the recommended reading list that Unpust have out, the Rainbow Reads and all these kind of things. They've all echoed the same list. And as you're saying, it's hard to find who signed off on this. Let's pinpoint the individual. It's very, very hard to find it because you just kept getting pointed in different directions of accountability. You know, well, that's above my pay grade, or that's on a different department, you know.
That's doing my job. I was told that a few times for librarians I visited and said, you know, this book is in your age 12 section and I've opened it and it's just not appropriate for children. And they said, we just do our job. We just get the boxes and put them on the shelves. We just do our job. But as a public servant who is paid to serve the public, they actually have a moral obligation to safeguard children under the Children First Act, under the Library Acts, the UN Convention Act, the EU. So just doing their job is not good enough. And it was interesting because there's very much an inconsistency across libraries as well, from all the research all the women in our group and also across the country have done, is Libraries Ireland has some of these books. If you go onto the Libraries of Ireland website and search their catalogue, if you put in some of the books, say for example the Juno Dawson ones, which are absolutely atrocious for kids, some of the libraries in Ireland have put them in the adult section and some still have them in the children's section. So there's not even any continuity. So I've sent 4 emails to Libraries Ireland saying, who did the risk assessment? Who vetted these books? But why are they in different categories based on county? Surely a 12-year-old shouldn't be accessing them in Fingal if they have to be an adult to access them in Carlow. It doesn't make sense. They sent me 4 copy-paste replies. And I said, but you've not answered any of my questions. They said, we feel we've resolved your matter. Completely whitewashed me and resolved it.
And that was even changed since the campaigns rolled out. So initially, everywhere across the board, it was in the 12 to 17, the young adult category. And they've actually changed. So it has had some traction. It has had some movement.
Maybe that's some librarians down in Carlow or whatever county saying, actually, this should go. And maybe they have the authority to move it on their catalogue. I'm not sure. But I went to the Ashbourne Library recently following a visit I did a few months ago. I went back in and went into the young adult section, age 12 to 17, young adults, actually children's, and none of the books were there. So I went to the counter and said, I'm looking for, and I gave them the name of a few books that I'd seen before and that I'd sent them the public notice letter on. And they said, all the books are upstairs in a box locked away. And I think I had the biggest smile on my face. It was like all my Christmases came at once. And I said, why are they locked away? They said, oh, we're looking at the age category, sort of re-looking at that. Same thing in Navan Library. I heard someone went into the Navan Library where Linda and I were at recently, and all of those books have been moved out of the children's section. So it's happening. It is making a difference, but we won't be happy until every library gets a memo to say, these are the books that should not be in the age 12 to 17 section. These are the books that should be removed from the school curriculum. You know, we can't just be celebrating that 1 or 2 books were removed. It has to be all the inappropriate books for children.
The thing that bothers me the most about these books, the thing that bothers me the most about these books is that it's all very much targeted in one way. There's no kind of, it's biased, you know, in a sense. There's no way of allowing children to read the positive things that may come from it or the negative things that may come from it. You know, firstly, children can't, like they can't have informed consent because they can't fully process the outcomes of these decisions. And this book that we're discussing today even has a section within it that advises these kids to freeze their eggs or their sperm because they're too young to make a decision about whether or not they want a family in the future. So they're on the side of caution and freeze their eggs or sperm. But hang on, but yet they're young enough to make the decision to change their sex entirely, but not young enough, you know, not old enough then to decide that.
But even that is even misleading, because if a young girl, let's say, reads that and says, oh, well, I'll freeze, and they go, but that's not, what are they supposed to do with the eggs if they go all the steps and get their uterus removed? It's also misleading, making them think you have a backup plan. But sure what? Surrogacy isn't legal in this country. What do you do with the egg? Where do you go
Exactly.
with it? You know what I mean? There's a whole other thing you're creating.
So
And
it's not informed consent.
It's not informed consent. And you were saying that they're not showing both sides of the argument, but I'd go even a step further in saying they are implying that this is reversible. They are implying in all of their language that this is reversible and that this will not do any damage.
It's quite subtle. Yeah.
Let me ask you both. You both are mommies to two beautiful little girls. Would you let your child get a tattoo right now? Or maybe when they're 10 or 12, would you let them make a permanent decision to get a tattoo?
God. No, I was 29 when I got my first tattoo because I wanted to be sure that the permanency of that ink on my body was going to be something I was going to be happy with for the rest of my life, because it is so permanent.
Yeah.
You know,
and I had a similar thing to you, Natalie. So for when I was young, I was certainly rebellious, and I suffered from depression and low self-esteem and all these things as well. But I was very headstrong, and I knew that no, I can't. If I'll end up getting something tattooed on me, and I'll regret it. So I got piercings. I got lots of piercings, which I could take out. You know, that I had at least that much forward thinking that I could say, no, tattoos maybe is not the way for me to go. I'll go for it.
I had a rebellious moment. I had a rebellious moment. I went to the hairstylist, and everyone was getting what was called a rat tail. I was an 80s child, and a rat tail was when they cut your hair shorter, but you have a long piece in the back. And I was going to dye this rat tail purple. And my dad said to me, my late great father said, if you get a purple rat tail, you're not going to the school disco. And this, like the disco is like, you can't miss the disco, you know, kissing boys under the bleachers or whatever. Well, I got the rat tail. I got the purple rat tail, and I sat home when all my friends were dancing, but I was so proud I made that decision to get that purple hair thing. But it grew out and it washed out. But I think today, if I had a permanent piece of purple hair in my head that never went away, I would regret that piece of hair. So if kids aren't old enough to get a tattoo or drive a car or vote, it's because their brains aren't mature enough to make a decision. How can they make a decision to take puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, get a full mastectomy for their healthy breasts, remove their womb? Or, you know, the boy that I met had removed his, you know, penis, and he now is, you know, in his probably late 20s and doesn't have a penis but wants to be a boy. Once those things happen, they can't be reversed.
You can't. Yeah, and like a lot of these kids, like I think we discussed this before, that, you know, if they start on puberty blockers at a young age, then their organs don't develop, they don't develop a penis, etc. So when they do then go forward into the surgical aspect of it, they have nothing to, you know, create that surgical whatever. So, you know, it's experimental surgery. We heard about the young child that died
developing a penis. So when they go on to create a fake vagina, they don't even have them.
So they're using bits of intestines, and like that poor child that died, you know. So it's all experimental, but yet we're being pushed and told that this is scientific. It's a medical thing. It's not.
But it's the language of it again, like to go to the language of it again, you know, they're even using terms like dead name. So it gives finality to kids. So even if they haven't gone on to the stage of a medical transition, as it's called, you know, and they're still in the, maybe not even start on any sort of drugs, they're still in the social transition phase. I hate using any of their terms, but there you go. The idea of implanting this dead name thing, the idea of the psychology behind all the teachers and everyone getting on board with the pronouns and this new name, and then that the other name is a dead name, as if you can know, if that child is going through a phase and they naturally, or for whatever reason, attention seeking, they feel confused, whatever it is, you know, social contagion wise, you know, to go along with what's trending. If they then get to a day that they're like, oh, I don't really feel this anymore, I actually feel uncomfortable in this now, they feel gridlocked. They feel wholeheartedly gridlocked because everyone around them is like, yeah, you know, this is what it is, and they've changed it. That's your dead name. That's not your name anymore. And they feel like, well, where do I go to? And that's the kids that haven't even gone that far. Those poor panel of young adults who were in a real term young adults, they were all around 20 mark, that Janice had, that were speaking at GenSpect, they literally are at a stage, not just psychologically feeling that way, but they've removed all their sex organs.
Yeah, and they've all said the same thing, that once they want to detransition, the support is gone. The support is gone. There's the railroad of support to get them on the pharmaceutical train, the surgical train, and then if they change their minds, you're on your own.
And the thing that stood out to me, the thing that stood out to me at GenSpec that was the most sort of sobering fact is that we will deny the children who go down the path of, you know, thinking that they're trans. No kid is trans. No child is born in the wrong body. Nature makes no mistakes. But if a kid is led down the path from what they learn in the school curriculum or the library books, we deprive that child of love for the rest of their life. And an expert spoke at the GenSpect conference and said that their dating pool reduces by 95%. So although this is becoming or may become a social contagion and everybody wants to, you know, go down and become trans this and trans that fad will die. The social contagion will end. You'll end up with kids who are just, you know, mentally distraught and their bodies are mutilated. Their dating pool reduced by 95%. They probably will never have children, which is why they're being asked, some of them, to freeze their eggs and sperm now. So they become sterile, no sex organs, fake penises, which, you know, we've seen photos of those, which are very disturbing, and, you know, all of that zipper chest for girls.
But also unable to have an orgasm or enjoy sex.
No orgasm. No children, no marriage, no dating pool. So how isolated would you feel without all of those things in your life, if that's what you want? Some people may or may not want to get married or have kids, but I mean, they can't even have an orgasm. I mean, that's a, most people would probably want one of those.
One of the things that you said there, Gianna, you were talking about a social contagion, a fad that would likely die out, because of course this ideology being pushed on kids as a fact is a means to an end. It's a stepping stone to lower the age of consent, to say, well, kids should be able to decide this, that, and the other for themselves. And if they're slowly shoehorning in, next we've got the hate speech law, this, that, and the other, HPRA Act, and they're slowly shoehorning in this, that, and the other to, one could presume, remove the whole idea of consent altogether. Right now, we've got the likes of Leo Varadkar and various others being quoted saying, and you see this all over the world, the same sentence, trans kids exist. You know, this is one of their things to implant. This is, again, language. Trans kids exist, this phraseology, to make it sound as if, oh, it's real, it's tangible, it exists. It's be a hop, skip, and a jump before maps exist. Yeah. And that's, of course, another language, another rename, a rebrand of pedophile, because we hear pedophile, alarm bells go off. You hear minor attracted person, not so many alarm bells. Much the same as Jana was saying earlier on, we were chatting, she was saying, like, you know, you hear child and you hear porn in the one sentence, alarm bells go off. You hear young adult and porn and you think, sure, of course, young adults are into the porn and they're into this, that, and the other. So the internet these days and all this kind of stuff, you know, and it's just unacceptable. People need to see through the language that's been used, look at the children and say, these are children. This is not good enough. Sure, they can get it anyway on the internet. This is not good enough. It's your job to safeguard these kids, you know, and nobody's exempt. You don't even have to be a mother or a father. As an adult, it's your job by natural law to protect these kids. And even earlier on, we were talking about all the different acts and statutes that are in place at the moment to safeguard kids, to protect the role of the mother and the father, and the role they have in the life of kids, you know, that's being bypassed and everything like that. But let's for a second remove all of these man-made laws, be it the EU, be it our national ones, even our constitution. Let's remove them for a second, although our constitution is founded on natural law. And let's just focus on natural inherent morality. Let's focus on what is innately good, innately right. You know, children must always be safeguarded, always. And there is no excuse, none. No. Absolutely none, you know.
Really good point. And if I can jump in, if I can jump in on the safeguarding, I know in Ireland back in 2015, the Irish people voted in the referendum for the Children First Act of 2015. And I have been, when I'm on the radio talking about this, presenters have tried to shut me down when I said, let me read the Children First Act here. Let me read this. No, you don't need to. No, I will read this. And people can listen to the Michael Reed LMFM interview. He did not want me to read the Children's First Act. But when I read about sexual abuse, that showing children sexually explicit material is often a feature that a perpetrator does in the grooming process. The word grooming is used in our own law, But whenever you try to speak about the protection of children, whether it's the law or your innate sense of safeguarding, people just, it's like, no, 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 my toddler doesn't want to go to bed. No, 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 no. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. And it's like, how can people just turn a blind eye to child abuse, particularly in Ireland, where there was serious child abuse?
It's bombarded from every single direction. And speaking of groomers, Juno Dawson's books have been championed recently from the Sunday Indo Culture magazine. Their culture insert has front page picture of this guy. And the books have been said, like, you know, something along the lines of the books that your teens need to read. Now, speaking of groomers, the language, I don't know if anyone has read this book is gay, or what the tea, the language that it's written in, as if it's written by a child, you know, it's purposely childlike language. And this particular book, This Book is Gay, has a page on it that has a bullet point how-to guide on how to use a sex app. What on earth is that doing in the kids section? What is that doing in the kids section? We're not talking about banning books. Move the book into the adult section. Have at it. Have at it. Do what you want, grown adults. Have at it. Now, the trans book, survival guide that we're talking about, that shouldn't even be in the adult section, because that's dangerous. That's telling people to get drugs on the black market if they can't get prescribed them. No, you know, that's... But we're talking about this book. It has no right. And what is the Sunday Independent doing, championing this and actually using a headline, books your teens need? A book with a how-to guide for a sex app. And the funny thing is, talking about your library campaigns as well, what many have started to do around the country is hold a bag of these books. Am I right, Jana? Because so often we meet people and talk to people and they say, would you stop? That's not in there.
They don't believe it. They do not believe it. I spoke to a woman about the dating sex app thing. And she said, oh, I'm sure that's, you know, in order to let children know the dangers of using dating apps. And I'm like, no, it's telling them how to use it.
Bullet points. Upload your pic, download the app, upload a picture, because it's geographic, it can see your geographical location. It makes it easy to meet people for sex. Like, it's bullet pointed.
And here's a question before we wrap up, because I'll have a very boisterous 4-year-old coming in the door in about 10 minutes. So in the next few minutes, I want to ask you a question. Why do you think, so as you know, and being part of the Natural Women's Council, we've done some really amazing letter campaigns with the help of the likes of Lawyers for Justice Ireland, Parents' Rights Alliance, and Irish Education Alliance. And we've done loads of letters to the libraries, the county council, Children's Ombudsman. We've even gone into Garda stations around the country to get pulse numbers. And when we got the pulse number, I remember our very first one was Pierce Street Garda Station. And he gave us a pulse number. We went to a hotel, we had a toast, and we got a pulse number. The guards are going to open a criminal case because it breaks the Child First Act. 2 hours later, hi, this is Garda, whoever. We're going to dismiss this as a criminal case. It's actually just, you're going to have to take it as a civil matter. And I said, but it breaks child protection laws in this country. The inspector at Pierce Street Garda Station said to me, Jana, you're a campaigner. You need to just please keep on campaigning. And I thought, well, if the libraries, the council, the ombudsman, TUSLA, and the Garda are dismissing this, why should I be taking my free time and energy having to campaign tirelessly for child protection laws that aren't being upheld? So why do you think all of these authorities are kicking it to touch? Why?
Well, I think everybody has been handed a hymn sheet. They've all been handed a hymn sheet. We touched on earlier about the librarians being told to omit minutes of the meetings if the discussion went a certain way. And without a shadow of a doubt, and we already know that teachers and principals and various people have been given certain memos or certain emails to the effect of, you know, this is how you deal with this, XYZ. This is what we say and this is what we don't say. And it's implied that there will be repercussions, if not directly stated, that there will be repercussions for these individuals if they don't toe the line. So without a shadow of a doubt, that's the case, you know, but that's what we're trying to get at, isn't it? Who's accountable? And that's a question that you put forward recently, Jana, wasn't it? With that, if a child, let's say a 12-year-old, gets this book out of the child section of the library or sees it on the recommended reading list on Post or wherever, and takes this book and reads this book and sees the sex app, downloads the sex app and does all this, meets somebody, a grown adult, and is raped, who is accountable? Because they have made this, they have literally not only, if something just exists in the world, that's one thing, but when they've gone out of their way and put these books on a list, put these books on a shelf that's for kids, you know, and parents are just assuming that they can trust all these authorities. And it's the same in school. They are shoehorning this stuff into school without any discussion with the parents, without any proof that there was even a need in our society for this education, as they call it, this ideology being taught as a fact. They're shoehorning it in, and parents are learning about it after the fact from their children.
Yeah, the Busybody books is a great example, and anyone can Google themselves, HSE Busybody's book. They nobody knew that gender ideology was being taught in schools before the proposed curriculum changes, which are coming in September 2023. But this Busybody books is already in circulation, and there's a 2-page section on gender ideology teaching children that their gender may be different than the one they were born in at birth. So that's been out there already, and I certainly didn't know it was out there.
Very innocent language. Again, pay attention to the language that they're using. Very innocent, and you'll hear buzzword like kindness, inclusive, and all these things. They're gaslighting these kids. We can even see a teaching tool that was shared by Into, a teaching tool, which is an animated thing that's been shown to student teachers that shows a scenario of a teacher in a classroom of primary school kids instructing the kids that Johnny is now Mary, and that we must all call Johnny Mary, and use X, Y, and Z pronouns to be kind and to be inclusive, implying that to do the opposite is to be a bad person. And right from the level of student teachers, they're indoctrinating this at every single level, indoctrinating that this is normal, that this is kind, this is inclusive, and just completely whitewashing.
And while you're speaking, I'm trying to find a tweet here. I'm scrolling through my tweets. Anyone who wants to follow me on Twitter, it's JKLUNDEN, JKLUNDEN. We also have Natural Women's Council on Telegram. But there was a really good tweet I retweeted yesterday. Yes, it's a tweet by a student. It's at brand DUBH4, so at BRAND.
That's actually dope, that word, meaning it's black in the Irish language.
Yes,
a brand.
The tweet is called, it says, "What is happening in Irish secondary schools? A thread of my experiences with gender ideology in my school." And this brave student spoke up, the secondary school student, and I suggest everyone look at this tweet, on how it all began in November 2021 when her school celebrated Stand Up Week or Stand Up Awareness Week. And they put up the posters, and everyone was expected to toe the line. They wanted all the kids to be allies. They were told if someone in the class transitioned that teachers would not tell anybody, including parents. And the thread goes on. And this was like November 2021, before it became as much in our faces. But, you know, the students don't want this. When we were at the Department of Education event back a few weeks ago at the speaking out about the curriculum, the one where I was assaulted by a trans right activist who threw a bucket of liquid on my head, which he has been, I will say he, because even though he had a dress on and lipstick, he's still a man. A man incited violence on me, assaulted me by throwing a bucket of liquid on me. Thank God it wasn't acid. He's been summoned to court, which is great. But there was a little boy who came up to us, probably about 12, 13, and he said, "I'm so glad that all of you are speaking out today." He said, "I'm Muslim. It's against my religion and culture to actually buy into the transgender, the pronouns, and anything of that sort." He was expelled from school. He was really distraught. Him and his friend were there, and he was expelled from school for not respecting the wishes of a boy who said he was a girl to boy or whatever, and refused to call them a she or a her, when really it's that's a boy. Yeah. And imagine a child being expelled from school.
Crazy. Yeah, but like the whole thing is like inclusivity, okay? You want to include everybody, but yet this inclusivity seems to solely focus on gender ideology.
Kind of like a cult. So you need to repeat the words of the master.
It's absolutely like a cult. There's a fantastic lady to follow on Twitter, and while you're talking, I'll dig out her name. She was at GenSpect, and she did the comparisons. She's an academic, and she did the comparisons of the transgender ideology to an actual religion, or really more like a cult, really, I believe. But she did like how it's actually rolled out and how it's done. It's just like a religion.
Yeah, so spot on.
And it's not diverse because it's supposed to be packaged as kindness, inclusion, diversity. However, if you and I refuse to call that man a woman because they're a biological male and they can't change sex, we are shut down. Hate speech will have us probably criminalized. Kids are getting expelled from school. Enoch Burke didn't want to play
Teachers
the
are getting
and you know,
yeah.
that's being he's being made an example of in the country. Is that's what will happen, teachers, if you speak out, that's what will happen. And so it's not diverse. It's only diverse if you believe in the ideology and that fantasy. But if you question it, that's not respected. So actually our views aren't respected. So it's really not diverse and inclusive if we're being excluded for questioning it, is it?
Censorship is violence, and make no mistake about it. If anyone puts a hand over your mouth, that is an act of violence. And to quash any form of discussion and not allow the discussion to take place, let alone even to go as far as a step as to change the Hate Speech Act and to criminalize certain speech, it is an act of violence onto the people, and make no mistake about that.
It's narcissistic. It's you better believe this, and you better shut up or you're going to be in trouble if you don't buy into this ideology and this fantasy. And if you question it, it's very narcissistic. But the lady I was suggesting everyone follow is Colette Culfer, and I'll give everyone her handle is at Colette Culfer, COLFER. So it's COLETTE She's an academic. She is from Waterford, and she is a lecturer in world religions, a writer, a past life journalist, and a national radio award winner. And she writes some really, really insightful things about this topic. So that's another one to follow. But I think we probably have to wrap up shortly because my son will be racing through the door in a moment with lots of hugs for me.
Stick in just one more piece of awareness for parents as well, if any parents are watching this. So another tool that they're doing to shoehorn this into school, which is already happening in schools around the country, secondary schools around the country, I don't know about primary schools, but if it isn't yet, it will be, is that they are they're outsourcing to Belong To, and getting this organization, reps from this organization, to come to to schools. They're calling kids to assembly. At the point that kids are being called to assembly, they don't know what the assembly is about. They arrive in assembly and are talked at by these two people preaching the word of gender ideology as a fact at these. Parents are not being told in advance. Kids aren't being told in advance. They are just lumped in. Now, who are these people from Belong To? You know, even if they were qualified psychologists, teachers, parents, even at that, it's wrong for them to be preaching gender ideology as a fact. This outsource. Who are these people? Who are they regulated by? But more often than not, they are not. They are not teachers, psychologists, or parents, or whatever. They are just representatives from Belong To who believe in this ideology and are being brought into the school, on whose book I don't know, to preach this to kids. This is another one to look out for, because already in the last few months, numerous schools, numerous teens have told us that this has happened in their school. They were randomly pulled out from their studies to be talked at by some. And one very concerning thing was a Leaving Cert year being told that now some of them are already 18 and some of them are soon to be 18, and that means that they're legal adults and they can go down these avenues without needing anyone. This was the kind of thing that was said to them. Wow. What are they doing in schools, this Belong To organization, championed by the Late Late Show recently, and giving a gift of €58,000? That was really and the buzzword notice from Tuberty, kindness and inclusion. You know, when he gifted this 58,000 that was funded for Belong To, this heinous organization, absolutely heinous organization.
And that's a really good point, Natasha. I was on the radio, I can't remember which show this was on, and I was talking about this school curriculum and how many parents in schools oppose it. And there was a man on the show, a man, Stephen, he said he was gay, he doesn't have any children, and he goes into schools. I think his organization, he's a rock climbing teacher as well, he might be from Stand Up or something like that. Anyway, he goes into schools, talks about these topics that we're concerned with as parents, and I said, well, we don't agree with it. And he said, if parents don't agree with what I'm teaching, keep your kids home that day. So how dare he, who doesn't even have children, say that if you don't like it, Mama, what I'm teaching, you keep your 2 children home because I'm going to teach it. I mean, how outrageous is that? So I guess that, you know, when we end, I'd like to talk about what can mothers and fathers do? What can we do about it besides feeling frustrated? There's several things that we can do. So first off is you can call your school, your principal, board of management, parents association, and state that you do not consent to this. really pressure the school not to bring it in. The second thing you can do is, and I'll post the link on the YouTube at the bottom, is do an opt-out letter. Now, it is a last resort. We don't want it in schools, but an opt-out letter is really the next best thing to get your children out of the curriculum. The third thing you can do is talk to every single person you know about this in a conversation. Have you heard what's coming in the school curriculum? No. Well, let me tell you, gender identity, gender ideology is coming in, etc. And also give them a leaflet. So the leaflet campaign, which I'll post 2 things on the bottom. I'll post the website, which has the leaflet on it. I'll post the Go Get Funding. We have 100,000 of these leaflets printed and going in circulation. 60,000 are already out. Another 40,000 I'm picking up in the next hour from the print shop. And that's 100,000. And we're going to keep the fundraiser open to get another 100,000 ordered. Talk to everyone you know about this. Don't feel helpless. As Natasha said, it is your moral obligation as a man and woman to stop this. So I have a little boy who's going to be coming in. I don't want him on the camera, so in public, because God knows I get enough crazies around me. So I'm going to just move outside. So hold on. I'm going to move.
And while you're walking there, I'll add to what you were saying there and say, like, you know, don't fall victim to one of the tools of.
Oh, whoops, I probably have no cover. Hold on. Oh, I probably have no cover here. One sec. Can you hear me now?
Just let people bounce off you. You should be willing to take bullets for kids, you know, to protect children.
I need to end the call because I have my little son coming in and I don't want his face on the camera for the world to see due to the craziness. But thank you both so much for your great conversation. I'll get this posted, and thanks for the great work, and Natalie, on not taking no many times, going through all the brick walls and hurdles to protect childhood, and you as well, Natasha. So we have a great group of women on our Natural Women's Council fighting against this madness.
Hey, thanks, Jana.
Thank you. Have a great day.